Well, they're in somehow. Now we can look ahead to the postseason coming up in just over a week's time. Coming to you from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Make sure to go grab yourself a Polar Pop and sign up for the Inner Circle program. It is the PHNX Rising podcast this Tuesday, October 22nd. And it's a Tuesday when Phoenix Rising are in the playoffs, Rees.
Yeah, weird feeling. I mean,
how long have we spent this season saying, are they going to make it? Are they going to not?
I mean, it was like 2.5 weeks ago, we said, oh yeah, this team's definitely not going to make it after that Monterey Bay loss. But here we are in the playoffs. That's a very strange turn of events.
Indeed it is. I'm on Evans. We got Rees over here because Max Simpson's not here with us today. We do have Rees at least, which is...
Is Max on vacation?
No, apparently he's not on vacation today.
Wow.
I know.
Shocker.
But he is here in spirit. Leave a like. You can see him there preaching from his little, whatever he is, as he's pointing at you and telling you, demanding that you leave a like on this one. Well, we got a lot to talk about today. We want to talk about Rising's loss to Memphis because, of course, the team did clinch with a loss. Yeah. In the end, it turns out, they clinched because of results elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you, Danny Stone.
Thank you, Danny Stone. Yeah. And Kev Lambert was only able to get the one goal in the end against Lou City, so that San Antonio now can only equal Rising's points tally rather than surpass it. Meanwhile, we've also got to talk a little bit about, since they are in the playoffs now, who could the potential opponents be and what could that look like when it comes around. So we got a lot to talk about. First, Rees, let's talk about Memphis. Let's talk about Phoenix Rising's game there. Just overall, you weren't on the pod that night. You weren't on the post-game show. Let's just hear it. Come on. Sum it up as briefly as you can.
Lack of creativity for large parts of the match, but
Hang on a minute. I said last game, not season.
Sorry. I mean,
not season, last game.
It's a match where you can genuinely copy and paste half the things we've been saying all season and paste it into this one. Rising only had one shot on target the whole match, 11 total. I did think Darius Johnson was a brighter spot, and I don't think he was one of the most outstanding players, but I did think after about the rough first 10, 15 minutes or so, he grew into that match in the first half. But the second half, Rising still really just did not threaten at all for a team that was down 1-0 by that point.
Yeah, it was just not their best showing, I think, in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, again, that's a story that's been going that way for the whole season, to be honest. Now, Rising, do they win the XG battle? You bet they won the XG battle.
As Max would say, hang it in the rafters.
1.11 XG for Phoenix Rising against a 0.55 for Memphis 901. But the key thing, of course, is not how many expected goals you create, it's what you do in terms of actually getting it in the back of that net. Yeah. And here's the thing about it. When you get into the numbers on shots on target, Memphis with 4 shots on target. Phoenix Rising, for all that XG they created, 1 shot on target. If you don't challenge the opposing goalkeeper, you're just not going to find ways to get it in the back of the net, are you?
Yeah, and of the 11 shots for Rising on Saturday, 7 of them came after the 80th minute. So that for the first 80 minutes of the game, 4 shots. That's not that. I don't even know what to say. That's just disgusting.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And that actually, you know what? Seeing some of the comments that are coming in. By the way, shout out to the chat. We love you guys. But I'm going to have to pick up on some of the stuff there as people are starting to move the discussion a little bit towards the officiating. And I think that's something that, again, I've seen quite a lot of online after the game. And I really want to kind of touch on that because I think if you're coming out of that game with the only things to talk about are the officiating, I'm going to be perfectly frank with you and say I'm not sure why even bother at that point. I don't think that overall, when I see people saying worst officiated game of the season, I just think that's a ridiculous opinion to hold. I don't think there's any real backing for that, to be perfectly frank. Foul selection throughout the game I thought was reasonable. There was obviously there were a couple of moments. I think the penalty shout, I understand why it was not given in the end. Those things happen. But again, I look at this game and see once again a Phoenix Rising team that has done nowhere near enough to win, quite frankly, on the night. And when I see then that kind of conversation deflected onto people just feel the need to have a gripe about officials, are you going to watch the football or are you going for a communal rant about referees? Because there's there are many other sports you can go and watch if you just want to go argue with referees and complain about referees. I mean, look, are you a sports fan or a referee critic? The thing about it is that most of the time they're not even particularly insightful criticisms. They're just the ref sucked.
Yeah, I mean, I get the disdain for how that penalty went because it is a moment of so much confusion. But the thing that gets me on that one, though, is there's so much aggression on it, but it's from Rising fans. It's Memphis fans the ones who should feel aggrieved by what happened there. I don't understand how Rising fans are the ones feeling aggrieved coming out of that one. Yeah. I mean, personally, to me, like they showed, like, there's 3 angles they showed on the broadcast, the main broadcast camera angle, and then the other 2. It's one where I can see why it was called a penalty, but then I can also see why it wasn't. I do think, to be honest, if it goes to VAR, it probably in the Premier League, Champions League, whatever. I do think it probably would have gotten overturned just because I think Bruno Lapa went down so easily. It feels like before Wyke even gets his foot down, he's already leaning towards the ground. But I don't know. It's just. Like, I think that moment of confusion where everyone's just stood there waiting for Bruno Lapa to take the penalty, and then it comes around where it's not. I think that's just confused everyone, and everyone's going to be put off by that. Everyone's going to be, on both sides, are going to be, what is this referee doing? That's going to be the moment.
See, I get that, but again, I still just go back to the fact that if you're coming out of a game where your team put one shot on target all game, and the talking point you want to go with is the referees, I just feel like
I agree.
At that point, it's just you're fighting a losing battle. I mean, to Devenel's comment there was overturned by the fourth and by AR1, which is the bench side assistant referee. That is correct per the pool reporter questions that we got back, where they said that because of input from the fourth official and AR1, the decision was made to reverse the decision in that case. Again, I'll say this in terms of saying things about it being overturned to Devenel's point there. Those things, just so we are clear on this one, other officials can't ever overturn the referee. They inform the referee of their view, and then the referee makes the final decision in this case. So the decision was made to reverse the call. But again, I just feel as though as you look at that team overall, it felt bereft of any real chance creation for much of the game. A lot of it was, I think, the same old that we see from this team. There were a couple of late headers in the 6-yard area that came within the last 5 minutes of the game. There were some opportunities from a little bit further wide as well, but by and large, they're just not creating enough, are they?
No, and again, how many times
even with a 1.11 XG?
Well, I mean, the large bulk of it came so late into that game. I mean,
right, half a goal practically came from those 2 headers in the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the XG now. It was from when the second half started until that flurry of shots in the 80th minute. Guess how many shots Rising had?
How many?
0. Their last shot of the first half came in the 32nd minute. So that's about 50 minutes without taking a shot.
Yeah,
that's just nuts to me. I mean, I thought their build-up play at times was better throughout that first half. I thought they started slow the first 10 minutes, like I said earlier. They struggled to get the left side of Quajo and Johnson into the game, but then once they did, their Rising were bursting into the final third. But once they got there, it's a similar story to how it's been all season. Rising can't pick anyone out, can't find anyone, can't take a shot, and end up goalless.
Right, and again, to go back to this one, we've been speaking about the 1.1 XG in there, but if you actually break it down into what it is by the timing there, up until the final 10 minutes of the game, until the 80th minute, if you only count things that are before that point, it's 0.36.
Yeah.
Right? Again, it just illustrates this is a team that comes in too little, too late, too often, quite frankly, in a lot of these games. And that's what kills them, right? And that's what's going to kill them against better opposition, especially as we look down the line, we look towards these playoff games, we look towards who they could be playing. There's a real chance here that this kind of too little, too late, too often kind of approach from them is going to leave them in a bit of a pinch. Now, you mentioned earlier with Darius Johnson and thoughts on him. Obviously, the decision also made there to leave Jearl Margaritha on the bench. Now, obviously, there are multiple factors that can go into that. He did play on international duty over with Curacao and had all the travel and all of that. So did DJ to an extent, though. As we look at that, really, do you think this team at this point can really afford to be starting games with Jearl Margaritha on the bench?
No. I think Jearl's your best player, and I don't really think there's much of a debate there. I think the attack looks way better when Jearl Margaritha's on the pitch, and I do wish in that last match that we could have seen Darius and Jearl start, because I think Jearl offers so much, and it's every time he gets on the ball in the final third, you kind of just hold your breath to see, what is he going to do now? What flashy moves is he going to do? I mean, he had that pass there on the disallowed goal at the end of the game where it was just a beautiful ball in, and then obviously doesn't end up counting, but still the guy is dangerous when he gets in the final third. I think from here on out, obviously it could be just 2 games, but he needs to be playing at the bulk of the minutes.
I would agree broadly. The other one in there to note, of course, people bringing up Fede Varela in the chat. We should mention him. Obviously, Fede Varela getting the start in this one, primarily because Giulio D'Ortiotto out injured. By the way, the word on that from after the game, coming from Diego Gómez, was that Giulio is likely to be out. Their hope is that he'll be back for the first round of the playoffs. We'll see if that is what happens, but he picked up a knock in training. He wasn't available for selection for the Memphis game on the weekend. Fede, how did we feel about Fede's performance?
I don't think it was bad. I think you would have preferred to see Giulio in there. Obviously he couldn't play, but I think Fede had his passes at times, and he does offer good passing at times through it. He offers his moments, but I think over a full match of work, you don't want to see Fede out there, in my opinion. I think you don't have better options now with Giulio out, but I mean, I think he did good enough to fill in the gap, but it's just not what you want going forward.
All right. And as you look at those numbers, you look at what Fede brought in this one, 70.6% passing accuracy over the course of the game. That drops to 57.1 if you look at those just in the final third. Creates 1 chance in there, which leaves him in the same kind of position as Ale Fuenmayor, Darius Johnson, Darius Formella, Mo Traore. Charlie Dennis had 2 chances created in there as well. And as you look at some of the other numbers in there, I mean, we brought up guys like Darius Johnson earlier. He won about 50% of his duels on that game. It was 6 out of 12. Fede also on about 50% with 4 out of 8. So a lot of these guys, I think there's another real story to this one, is that some of your attack-minded players are really not winning some of those duels in this game. I mean, it's 50-50 in the end for the entire game for both teams in total. Rising actually had the edge in the air, but at the same time, here's one bit that I found quite interesting. How many times did Rising win possession in the final third? You're kind of looking at my screen to see it, Rees.
Oh, man.
But it's 0.
Jeez.
Rising did not, at any stage in the game, win possession in the final third. Memphis did it 4 times. And so you ended up in a position where Rising's attacks were always going to start from deeper as a result. No real press of note in that game, at least not an effective one from Rising's perspective. And they also failed at times in the transitional moments, right? One of the big ones, obviously, the goal they concede. Now, dealing with Bruno Lapa was meant to be one of the aims for this club going in. That's what Diego Gómez said to us, that they wanted to try and take him out of some of those moments in terms of the transitional moments and what he could bring in those moments. We've seen it multiple times. He did it in this game, and just the way that it all came together. They found John Becerra out wide. It's not ideal. The amount of space that Bagheero had, and knowing, of course, that the nature of this team, how they play from Phoenix Rising's perspective, okay, they're going to be aggressive at times with those fullbacks. They're particularly going to be aggressive with Emil Quayshow. That's been such a defining characteristic of the way that this team plays under Diego Gómez. But it does leave you, if you don't plan for it well enough, it's going to leave you exposed at moments, in transitional moments in particular, in those wide spaces, in terms of the space that John Bagheero was able to create. Because as he's going out there, you have Alejandro Fuenmayor is back there. Ale, for all of his qualities that he does have, is not one of the paciest guys on this team. We have known that for the entirety of the time that he has been with Phoenix Rising. So we go back last season. This is nothing new. And he's not going to get out and cover that ground quickly enough in a lot of times. So we'll see. We'll see what happens going forward. We'll see, in particular, I think, how Phoenix Rising are going to line up when they come out on the weekend against Novo. And will we see the same kind of aggressive nature from them? I mean, we're getting to a point now where the season's starting to change, right? You're not necessarily going to games as much feeling like you need to win. You're going to go into games more feeling like you don't need to lose. Or you need to not lose.
Yeah. And to me, I think the decision to play, or not play, but start Fuenmayor in this match was a bit interesting to me. I think you have the more athletic option of Mo Traore on the bench. And he's shown to... excuse me, he's shown good performances when he's in the back line with Pop Marboy. So to me, that's a puzzling decision. I think you'd prefer to see more athleticness in the back line when you're going up against a squad that has Bruno Lapa and a few of the other players that Memphis has. I think you'd prefer to see more pace. And I don't think Fuenmayor doesn't have that, so I don't get that from Diego for that match.
Right. It's... At the same time, you probably want to stick with some of the guys who've done fine over the previous games. Again, defensively, Rising haven't generally struggled.
No, I agree
for a lot
with
of
that.
this season. That's a key part to this, is that they haven't generally struggled this season defensively. The big problem has been chance creation, but the problem is, again, when you come up against better sides, they're also going to find ways to punish you on the back line. They're going to find ways to take advantage of the fact that you're unlikely to score multiple goals in a lot of ways. And that's a really, really critical part, I think, going into the playoffs. Because, again, you're playing a very difficult side in Novo City this weekend. You are going to play other difficult sides as the season comes towards its conclusion. It could be one, it could be multiple. Depends on how well you do in that first playoff game. But we'll see. We'll see how it quite goes there. We'll have a look around some of the other results and quite what meant in the end that Phoenix Rising clinched their spot in the playoffs this weekend. San Antonio took on Louisville. It's a 1-1 draw. In a lot of ways, that would feel like it's a good result for San Antonio, given how good that Louisville had been this year, and in particular, given that Lou City took the lead in that game. It was Philip Goodall just before the stroke of half-time. It's in stoppage time, actually, in the first half. Put Lou City on top. Kevin Lambert did get a goal back for San Antonio. They drew 1-1 in the end there. Probably a fair reflection on the end when you look at it. 13 shots apiece, 4 on target for San Antonio, 3 on target for Louisville. The XG is not a million miles apart between those two sides. Honestly, a lot of these numbers, when you look at it, not that far apart between these two teams. So probably a fair result on the night. It does mean, obviously, that Lou City chasing the wins record for this league will not break the wins record. That maybe plays into things this weekend, maybe doesn't. We'll have to wait and see. But that draw in that game meant that San Antonio could only match the points total that Rising were already on. And Rising do have the head-to-head over them on the basis of head-to-head goal differential. The league is what it is. That's up there, apparently. Now, that wasn't sufficient. It did require another result to go Rising's way to seal it on the night with the loss, and that was New Mexico and Orange County. Orange County managing to get a point in that game. The 0-0 draw there, real thriller by the sound of things. But New Mexico in the end, 7 shots to Orange County's 11. Both sides down there at a little bit around about half a goal in XG. Kind of is what it is. But that one there, a positive result for Danny Stone's men, sealed their playoff place. And because it avoided the possibility of a 3 or 4-way tie, including Orange County, which would have complicated things for tiebreaker purposes, knowing that USL Championship is what it is. They don't have to make sense. Why make sense when you can be USL? That in this case, they're no longer capable of tying with Phoenix and San Antonio, and therefore Phoenix hold it over San Antonio. They clinch, and that's kind of where we are right now.
All I have to say is it would be a million times easier if the first tiebreaker was just goal difference. We wouldn't have to do
pretty much every league around the world
to figure out if Rising would clinch or not. But I feel like I should get like some credit for classes after trying to figure out some of these scenarios.
None of this is like very. It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? A lot of these things just seem to kind of. I don't know. They just. It's whatever the league feels like, and I mean we can get into this a little bit later when we look around the league a little bit more. But some of the things, I mean, for example, teams in the Eastern Conference that have clinched but haven't clinched, or are eliminated but aren't eliminated, and it's that kind of stuff that just leaves you truly scratching your head and just saying, why is USL like this?
Best league in the world. I mean, biggest league in the world. Everyone loves it. It's just.
Why is USL like this? That's the way that we feel sometimes. But regardless, there is the news, of course, Phoenix Rising in the playoffs. And when we come back from the break, we'll be talking through some of the teams that Phoenix Rising potentially could face in the postseason. But before then, we need to talk to you about our friends at Branded Bills. We don't have the hats up behind us there, unfortunately, and producer Carl isn't wearing one either, which is truly a disappointment here. But Branded Bills, they're one of our newest partners here at PHNX. They are a local company and they make some good stuff. Have you managed to nick one off of Max yet?
I have not, but now that he's not here today,
well, you shouldn't have said that on the pod, because now Max will know that you're about to go grab one of them.
I'll blame Kyle, probably.
We'll blame it on Damon. But those Branded Bills hats, they are good stuff. I managed to grab one off of Max before, and I enjoy wearing it out because it's going to keep me nice and shaded from the sun, and it feels good material, good stuff. And of course, I got the ASU hat as well. I'm not going to wear that U of A stuff, but they do have that if you are so inclined, or other colleges as well in their campus collection, and not just colleges, plenty of other stuff as well. Go get your hats now from Branded Bills, 20% off your first purchase with the promo code PHNX at brandedbills.com. And of course, we're also going to give a shout out to our friends at Circle K. If you aren't already a member of the Inner Circle Rewards program, why aren't you?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. Do you not like saving money? Do you not like saving money? Well, you should like saving money, and you're going to save 25 cents per gallon on those first 5 fill-ups when you sign up for the Inner Circle Rewards program today. Again, if you haven't, it's easy. It's free. You can join the Inner Circle program for free. You download the Circle K app. Terms and conditions, of course, do apply. But you get 3 cents per gallon every day, 25 cents per gallon off your first 5 fill-ups, and other member exclusive deals and discounts as well. If you need to go sign up for the Inner Circle program, you can check for full details over at circlek.com. Okay, Rees. We need to talk through who Phoenix Rising could be playing in the playoffs. There are 5 teams right now that Phoenix Rising could face. We'll go through the scenarios first. Let's just run through this. So, here's the scenarios in terms of where Rising will finish if they finish. Different results here. If Rising wins, this is where it gets complicated. They win away to Louisville, and neither Orange County nor Oakland wins, Rising will finish 6th. If Rising wins and only one of Orange County or Oakland wins, Rising will finish 7th. And if Rising wins but both Orange County and Oakland win, Rising will finish 8th. For context, Orange County are playing Hartford at home. Oakland are playing Birmingham Legion at home. And if Rising fails to win in Louisville, the easiest one of the lot, they draw. If they lose, Rising will finish in 8th place.
I mean, to me, I think the most
likely is they're going to finish in 8th.
Yeah, I think even if Rising do win, I can't see Orange County or Oakland slipping up. I think Orange County is definitely going to get the win. Hartford's going to have like 1,000,000 miles and 3 matches under their
but
legs.
They'll also have to feel the need to win.
Yeah. But just with that much travel, it's what Tulsa last weekend, and then Tampa Wednesday, and then back to Orange County. That's not fun at all. That's a lot of travel to go through. But I also think Hartford have the squad too. They have the ability to, but I just don't, not with that schedule. If it was how it was originally scheduled, maybe, but not since the Tampa match got postponed. As for Oakland, Birmingham don't have anything to play for, so who really knows if they turn up or not. Oakland, I mean, we all know they've struggled as of late, but the pick up of the win against Vegas, that could be a bit of shift of momentum for them, so we'll see.
Indeed, it could be. Well, right, the most likely scenario, we've said this, is that Phoenix Rising finishes in 8th. If that is the case, we do know who they will play in that case, and that will be none other than New Mexico United. New Mexico are the only team that have guaranteed they will host a playoff game in the Western Conference so far. They currently sit in first in the West. They've got 59 points. They've won 18 of their games so far. They'll finish the season at home to Memphis, but they're not on the best of form right now. This is a team that's coming in. You look at their last 5, they won the first of that last 5 games, but then since then, a loss, a draw. They're kind of hobbling their way in there, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, and it's really not like they're playing the most difficult of teams. Yes, they have the 4-0 loss to Sacramento in there, but it's also 4-0. You're just getting thumped out there. And then the Rising loss, obviously, and then draws against Tulsa and Orange County. So they're not really dropping points to the teams in the top 4. So if I'm Rising, I'd like to play them just because New Mexico's coming in on bad form. You've shown that you can win in Albuquerque. That's probably one of my more favorable opponents if I'm Rising.
Right, and if we have a look at some more of those stats there on New Mexico, Greg Hurst leads them in goals with 11. They actually create the 4th highest XG in USL Championship with 48.64, but they're pretty middle of the pack in terms of the expected goals against, right? So they're right around that mid-table. You look at Rising's form against them this season. Rising lost in the home game, but they won in the away game. And the best finish that New Mexico have ever had in the USL Championship playoffs, they made the Western Conference semifinals in 2020. Can they do one better here? They'll be hosting playoff games this time. That game, by the way, the only one, because they're the only team we know will be hosting, it's the only one that we can definitively tell you when that game will be played. If Phoenix Rising finishes 8th, they will travel to the number 1 seed, New Mexico United, and that game will be played on Sunday, the 3rd of November. It will be a 6 p.m. kickoff, local time and Arizona time, actually, because the clocks changed that day. So it'll be a Sunday game. There's a college football game on the Saturday. We'll see what happens there. We'll move on to the next team now. And this kind of mixed pack here from 2 to 5. It's a real mixed bag, right? But Vegas currently sitting 2nd right now. We don't know, by the way, the order. This 2nd through 5th could go in any kind of order. So it's going to be an interesting mess. And obviously Rising need to finish above 8th to play any of these. But 2nd is Las Vegas right now. They're on 50 points. They're probably on the best form of any team that are battling up around that kind of position right now. They've got 3 wins, a draw, and a loss in their last 5. They're going to finish the season away to North Carolina. So a cross-country trip for them. The big man for them, Corey Bennett, 13 goals so far on the season. But they're a real middle-of-the-pack team again in terms of their chance creation, 14th highest for XG, the 18th lowest for expected goals against. So again, pretty kind of middling despite the fact they're 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you had told me before the season, even after they announced the ownership change and signings that they had made, that they would be fighting for a home playoff game, I'd be shocked. I thought they had the quality from the start, but I just thought it would take way too long for them to get going. And to be honest, I don't know if they are. I think they're going to be a competitive playoff match. I think because it's their first ever one, they'd be up for it. I mean, who knows really what that home atmosphere would look like at Cashman Field, but that would be a tough one, I think, just in terms of quality in their squad.
Let's have a look back at that Las Vegas stuff for a minute there. Have a look at Rising's record against them. Obviously, they're a team that Rising have not gotten a win against this season. They drew up at Cashman Field. That was a pretty boring 0-0 draw, and then lost, obviously, in the 2 goals in stoppage time here in the home leg of that one, losing 2-1. As you mentioned, this is Las Vegas Lights' first ever time in the postseason. They have never qualified for it before. Their best finish prior to this was 9th in the Western Conference. That was in 2022. That was in a season where only 7 teams from the West would qualify for the postseason. So definitely a different one for them to feel. I'm not sure they're getting the oxygen up there that high up the table. They're not used to that.
Yeah.
They're really, really not used to that. But they're the form team right now. I think they're probably the grittier of the teams maybe in that kind of race right now, whereby they're not always necessarily the prettiest. They're not always going to really, really convincing. But then New Mexico aren't one either. No. They don't tend to blow many teams away. Let's have a look now at the team currently sitting in third place. It is Sacramento Republic. They're a familiar face up at this point in the table. But as they sit there on 49 points, they're really not on good form themselves. They've also not won a game in their last 4 matches, 2 losses, 2 draws in there. Their last win coming 5 games ago. They're going to finish the season at home against Colorado Springs, and they've got their leading scorer, Kieran Phillips, with 12 goals coming on loan.
Yeah, and they're another team who's dropping points against teams not at the top of the table. They have a loss against San Antonio, draw versus Monterey Bay, do have the draw against Memphis in there, but a loss versus El Paso. That's 3 teams that are out of the playoff race that you're dropping points to this late in the season. I mean, Rising pulled off the upset there last season. I don't think it would be that probable this year if Rising faced them. Sacramento is always a tough team to face. They've got 2 good goal scorers in Kieran Phillips and Trevor Amon. That attack is going to be tough to face. We saw that when they went up to Sacramento. And then creating chances against that side would be very tough for Rising. So that'd be an interesting matchup, but I don't think Rising come out on top of that one at all.
Yes, it's a valid point. Slim. But if we look at the underlying numbers for Sacramento, they're probably the only one here that really have, I think, the balance and the high underlying numbers for both categories there. If expected goals were the 5th highest in USL, and the expected goals against is the 6th lowest in USL. So again, this is a team that's quite well balanced in terms of both the attack and the defense, even if they're struggling as of late. Again, a team that Rising did get a draw against in one game, but this was the home game with a 1-0 draw, but they lost on the road there 2-0. So Rising only take 1 point out of a possible 6 against Sacramento. And they're the only one that is got that championship pedigree as a team among the clubs that we're going to be discussing now, the top 5 in the Western Conference. And they were the champions back in their debut season in 2014. They've battled well for it since. They, of course, lost in the conference final to Phoenix Rising last season. They also found themselves in the US Open Cup final not too long ago as well. So they know what they're doing in terms of getting into these knockout tournaments. But we'll have to see, especially because of the way that they're currently limping in.
Yeah, and I mean, having that like experience in knockout matches is going to be huge. I mean, that's why Vegas kind of worries me in that spot. But I mean, coached by Briggs there, he knows what he's doing. He's had Sacramento make deep runs, as you said, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's another one this year. Indeed. Now, as we move on to 4th place, and it's the team that are playing Sacramento in the final game of the season, Colorado Springs. They are also on 49 points there, so this one really critical. But again, it's a team they're not coming in on the best of form. They may have won their last game, but before that, it was 2 draws, 2 losses, and Ronaldo Damas leading the line for them. They had some struggles earlier in the season to really find ways to get the best out of Ronaldo Damas. He was coming in, of course, from San Diego Loyal. But he's a good forward. If you find ways to find him, he's going to reward you. And that's why you're looking at a guy who's got 12 goals so far this season. Yeah, and he seems to always have Rising's number. I mean, we saw that last season in the playoffs.
Hat-trick in a loss.
Hat-trick in a loss.
2 of them were penalties, in fairness. But
I mean, converting 2 penalties.
Including one deep into stoppage time to equalise. That was critical for them. I mean, that was probably the most pressure kick that that San Diego team has ever taken.
I mean, well, they didn't go far in any other runs, did they?
Well, they've never scored. He's the only... Actually, there's the stat for you on Ronaldo Damas. The only ever goal scorer for San Diego Loyal in the postseason. Did you know?
No Corey Herzog?
No, he actually scored their first ever postseason goal. And their last one.
Well, I mean...
He scored all 3. The only 3. The only postseason goal scorer in the history of San Diego Loyal before Phoenix Rising lowered them into their box.
Did they write about that in their book? there?
I don't know. I mean, I remember how the first page just told you about how they never won anything. Look at Colorado Springs, though, with some of those numbers. Beyond just Ronaldo Damas in there. Again, they're a team that will find ways to create some chances. They're 7th highest in USL in terms of their XG, but they're really, again, a middle-of-the-pack team in terms of those expected goals against. There's not a lot of real defensive teams, it feels, in this block of squads we're talking about, is there?
No, and I do think a trip to Colorado Springs is going to be the toughest. I mean, they have the 2nd best home record in the Western Conference.
The altitude, it plays a role, right?
Yeah, what is it, 6,000 feet up there, I
believe? They are, I believe,
believe
the highest professional football ground in the country.
Yeah, that's going to take you out of you. And we kind of saw that when Rising went up there. They were, or maybe that's just how Rising played. Rising seemed a little bit lethargic at times. And to be honest, with the goal scoring threat that Colorado Springs has, that's probably my most feared opponent. That's the one I want the least if I'm Rising.
All right. Well, as we talk about them and how they did, it was a 1 win in that one for Rising and the 1-0 in the home fixture. But they lost 2-0 away from home, as you were mentioning there. The best performance that Colorado Springs have ever put in, by the way, in the playoffs. They did make it to the Western Conference Final in 2022. We'll see if they can repeat that success now as they're hoping for a home playoff game to open things up. But they may well have to get a result against Sacramento to secure it. And then the final team that is vying for the top 4 place, you know them because they just came into town here. It's Memphis 901. They sit 5th in the Western Conference, 48 points. They're, again, a little bit of a mixed bag, but only 1 loss in that last 5. 2 draws, 2 wins in there as well. They will finish the season away to New Mexico, so it's a tough one for them. Bruno Lapa, the guy who we know Rising felt like they had to deal with in this last game and didn't when it really mattered most. Yeah. He's their top scorer with 11.
Yeah, and it could have been 12 too, but Memphis is an interesting one. I mean, we talked so much in the show before the Memphis game about how Panos Armenakis is probably the biggest storyline there, and then he didn't play. So we really don't know, not know about Memphis, but it's just interesting to see what they'll deploy at times. They obviously had Marlon out too for that game against Rising, so that wasn't even their full strength squad. And if you'd have to travel there, good luck, I'd say.
It's a long travel. Yeah. It's a long trip in terms of travel. Trust me, I know that. I've done it a couple of times now. For the Western Conference is the furthest you will travel. So yeah, it's not fun when you get that kind of a one. Let's have a look at their underlying numbers again, and they're quite middle of the pack there with the XG, the expected goals against, 42.63 XG, 41.33 XGA, so it's 11th highest, 12th lowest respectively. It's not ideal in terms of making them look like a team that are really going to threaten, but they do have some dangerous players in there, so maybe they will, maybe they won't. They're the only team, by the way, in this group of 5 squads we're talking about today that actually did the double of a Phoenix Rising this season. The only one that did the double. They won 5-1 in the game in Memphis. That was Danny Stone's last game as head coach of Phoenix Rising. They lost 1-0. Or they beat Rising 1-0 here in Phoenix just this past weekend. Their best finish, by the way, since they were a long-time Eastern Conference member, the semi-final in the East, 2022. That was their best performance in the playoffs. So, they're a team that have kind of been up there and thereabouts at times. They haven't really managed to convert that into success. Obviously, it's hard in the Eastern Conference when you have teams like Tampa Bay Rowdies or like Lou City in particular, who are just powerhouses in that conference. But it'll be interesting to see what they can do now, being in the West and knowing that they've got that opportunity to maybe take on some different teams where it's not quite as dominated by the same kind of just big name squads that it usually is.
Yeah, I mean, to me, for Memphis to go on a run, they'd have to secure that home playoff game, which they'd have to win realistically on the road against New Mexico. And I know New Mexico hasn't come in on the best form, but that's going to be a difficult task for anyone to do. But I mean, in Memphis, I don't see them as a contender. To be honest, I don't see any of the Western Conference teams as real USL championship contenders. But as for Western Conference contenders, I don't even know if there really is one yet. I don't think there's one.
I don't know who's emerging as the favorite at this point, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah.
Again, so many of these top teams, they're not coming in on the best of form. They've struggled Right, Reese, those 5 teams. Rising will face one of those 5. Let's rank them right now.
Okay.
Which one? You said you didn't want Colorado Springs. So they're number 5 for you, right? Number 5 is Colorado Springs. Number 4, who are we going in with?
I'd put Memphis, to be honest.
Memphis? You don't want the long trip. You don't want anything to do with the long trip.
Yeah.
You don't want to play on that abysmal playing surface that they have there in AutoZone Park. Yeah, that's understandable, right? There are some bad memories there. They did the double over you. Of course, it can be hard to do a treble over a team, but we'll see. Number 3, who are you taking?
This one's tough. There's a lot of... I think I'd go Sacramento, to be honest.
You put... Okay.
I really... I mean, to me, it's a toss-up between Sacramento or Vegas. One of them's in 3, one of them's in 2. I think for Sacramento, it's... Rising have struggled winning at away there in the regular season. I get they did it last season in the playoffs, but to be honest, I just don't see that same magic happening again. But then again,
I'd agree.
We'll see. And then 2's Vegas for me, just because
so you want New Mexico?
Yeah, I think that's one where Rising can realistically go on the road there and make it out alive into the next round.
Funnily enough, if you had to ask me who would be the team you'd think that they're most likely to beat out of that group, I'd probably agree with New Mexico. So I put New Mexico at 1 because to me, again, and I said this on the weekend, I just feel like there's a tightening effect at times in those kind of rivalries. When you play those games against teams that there's a particular bit of a hatred for, there's that tightening effect. And even in the playoffs, you're going to see that. You're going to see them play, I think, to each other's level. It's going to be chippy. It's going to be a good game, I think, in terms of as a neutral if you're watching it. But it's not going to be a fun game if you're a fan of either team because you don't want to go out of the playoffs to your rival in that kind of a match. I'd probably I don't think that Vegas is necessarily a team you want a whole lot to do with. I think that Vegas and Sac for me are coming in at 4 and 5.
Okay.
I feel as though when you look at, Colorado Springs and Memphis, I'd probably put, as weird as it is, Colorado Springs, I'm going to put them at 2.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's such a tough place to play with the altitude. Their home record's so good this year. I just wouldn't want any part of that at all. And then, I mean, you're playing... Correct. I feel like last season after the playoff game, Ronaldo Damas moved in either to the first or second most goals against Rising. Something absurd like that.
But that's partly because he plays.
Yeah, I know, but still, the guy has your number.
He does. But again, you look at the last 2 games that Colorado Springs have played at home, and they lost to San Antonio. They drew against Loudoun.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have a loss away to Orange County and a win by 1 goal away to Monterey Bay. And they drew away to El Paso. They've just kind of got that mixed bag that I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these teams, they're all in the weirdest of form, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, I believe Memphis is the only team to have won, or apologies, no, it's Vegas that have won majority of their last 5 matches. Vegas has won 3, Memphis has won 2, and the other 3 clubs have only won 1 of their last 5. That is very interesting form to go into the playoffs in on, and I mean, that's why I don't think there's one that you really don't want to see, but there's one there. I think they all could be beatable, but you just got to rank them by how Rising can take them on.
Right. Well, the teams in the West that we haven't mentioned that are qualified for the playoffs, they won't be hosting, so they won't be facing Rising in the first round. Oakland Roots and Orange County, both of those teams are in. Have a quick look at the Eastern Conference because there's some real interesting stuff going on over there. Lou City obviously have topped the table in the East. They have won the Players' Shield. They have the best record in USL Championship in the regular season with 73 points. Charleston Battery, Detroit City in the 11. All of those guys are in. And then you have Rhode Island who are in, but according to the league, not in. But they're in, but they're not in. And this is something I find really intriguing. And it's kind of a testament, I think, to how bizarre the league's rules are, how daft they are as they approach some of this, right? You can't give a team a magic number and also say, for example, regardless of the outcomes of this weekend's matchups, they will be in. The league has made their bed in some ways with these daft tiebreakers. They don't make sense. We knew they wouldn't make sense, but this is kind of where we are.
Yeah, I mean, we saw on Twitter, Rhode Island posted a video on the plane there, coach Connor
saying that there's no way for them to not be in.
Yeah.
They're in, and they're in. We know they're in.
And there's not an X next to the name on the USL standings.
And equally, Birmingham Legion, there is no scenario where they can actually make it in. They are 3 points behind, but the only way they make it in will be in a weird kind. Or the only way that they'd end up potentially in is a weird kind of tie, whereby they also don't have the in-conference points per game to actually get them in. So they're not eliminated though, technically, apparently. But they're also not in. The teams are battling for it still. I know teams are battling still. Tampa Bay Rowdies, 2 games to play, 46 points. Pittsburgh Riverhounds and North Carolina FC are both on 45 points, 33 games played. They got just 1 left. 2 games to play for Hartford Athletic. They're on 43, just outside. They're 2 points behind the line. But with 2 games to play, they'll travel away to play in Bradenton in midweek against Tampa Bay Rowdies there. They're playing that game at IMG Academy. Loudon sit outside as well, 42 points, 1 game left to play. Unsurprisingly, Miami FC. Shout out to Miami FC, by the way.
Messi?
Shout out. No Messi. Miami FC. 11 points from 33 games, minus 56.
Yeah.
Goal difference. How do you get a minus 56 goal difference?
I mean, how many cities
These
can
guys
say...
are terrible.
How many cities can say they have a team at the top of one league? Because Inter Miami won the Supporter Shield, and then one at the bottom of another.
Hang on a minute. I'm looking right now, by the way, at their last 5. They haven't scored a goal.
Yeah. I mean,
they've lost 3-0 to Detroit, 4-0 to Pittsburgh, 3-0 to Louisville, 4-0 to Indy. Oh, only 1-0 against Birmingham Legion.
Remember when Rising beat them 2-0? That was fun.
Indeed. What a messy one. And not quite in the way that you're probably
like
thinking.
40 shirts we saw that day.
Oh, so many of them. So many of them kept coming along. Well, you know what? Rees, I think we're coming towards the conclusion here.
Yeah.
We'll be back on Thursday, by the way. We're going to have Mr. Max Simpson alongside for that one. He is back. We'll be previewing everything that you want to know as we go into our talk with Louisville City and that game coming up on the road this weekend. If you haven't already done so, we've got a nice little offer for you. If you're signing up to be a diehard right now, this special limited time intro offer, just $48. That's $4 per month. That is pretty good deal right there. Pretty good deal. You will get a t-shirt for signing up from our PHNX locker. And of course, you can join us over on the Discord lounge where we all like to have a good chat. We like to bully Max sometimes. It's a good time. It's a good time. You can ask Max where he is if you want. You can also go ahead and check out all of our written content on the website. I may be adding a couple of bits in now as we get towards the playoffs. We'll also have some stuff there. Of course, if you're into our other Valley teams, if you're into the Suns, check out all of Jearl's stuff. So much preview of the big season coming up now for the Phoenix Suns. We've also got recaps from the Cardinals there from Craig Morgan and all kind of fun stuff as well from guys like Jesse Freeman covering the D-backs, even though they're not doing very much at the moment, unfortunately.
Sadness.
It's a miserable time. We don't want to talk about that, but make sure to go sign up and become a diehard now if you aren't one already. You can go check it out at gophnx.com/intro to get that introductory offer of just $48 to sign up for the year. It's a pretty good deal.
It is.
Really good deal. Really good deal.
Get on it.
Get on it. Yeah, there we go, Rees. Don't sell it too hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you want me to say? Like, I would copy Landon Donovan's famous lines, but they're not, his halftime speech. We don't want to copy Landon. The one, but we can't say on air.
You can follow me on Twitter at OJAvans18. You can follow Rees on Twitter at Rees11_. You can follow our producer Kyle at KCoop Sports. You can follow Max David Simpson, but don't. And you can follow the show, PHNX__rising, because double the underscores.
Double the trips to Albuquerque in like a month
very
span.
Possible. It could well end up that way.
Yeah.
Pray for me, please. We'll see you all over there in Albuquerque, by the way. You got to make the trip. Come on, guys. You got to make the trip. Big playoff game, if that is indeed what happens, depending on the results this weekend. Right. Remember, we will be back here on Thursday, 6 o'clock. Back to our usual 6 o'clock start time for that one. And until then, good night.
We all silly like the mayor.